drama was taking place over the weekend in East Arnhem Land in Perth. It was revealed the Western Australian government would scrap its controversial new cultural heritage laws. The new laws, developed under Mark McGowan but left for the new Premier Roger Cook to roll out, restrict the ability for landowners to develop on sites that have distinct Aboriginal cultural heritage. In some cases, it would have required landowners to seek special permits or prepare management plans, depending on the impact on surrounding land. The laws had sparked outrage from farmers and the state opposition, whose leader, Shane Love, joined me a short time ago. Shane Love, thanks for your time. Do you feel a victory today over the Cook government with being apparent they're dumping their plans for this Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act?
Well, we're yet to hear exactly what is the case. There's been reports in the press. Understand that there have been stakeholder meetings this morning between the Premier and organisations such as farmers and miners, but we're yet to get any clarity in Western Australia about exactly what is the situation here, but expecting to hear in the next day or so that there will be a repeal of the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act.
And what was in the new Act? What were the impositions that were threatened to be put on farmers and the like?
Well, what the new Act had within it was a system where there was a confusion, I think, between the holders of Aboriginal cultural knowledge, the Aboriginal people, and the system of administering the safeguarding and the requirements for development approvals, etc., and management plans under that legislation. So there was no separation really between those who were making the decisions and those who were charging the fees, and that's always a bad thing.
Well, give us an example about how it was to work that's been the subject of controversy.
Well, what it meant was that anybody who was on a property of more than 1,100 square metres that wanted to undertake any of the activities that you would normally think were normal in those things, like digging holes or driving, putting in driveways, etc. All of those activities were subject to the Act, and people could actually find themselves subject to fines if they didn't go through a process which would involve them undertaking due diligence, which could involve and probably would involve for many activities having to pay for people to come and look at the property and survey the property for cultural heritage, etc. All of that costing a lot of money, but also a lot of time. And we also had a situation in the state where there wasn't the processes put in place where people could get approval. So I'm aware of situations where miners, for instance, who had contracted drillers to come in and work at the site, had actually had to lay the drillers off and put off the programs because they actually didn't know how they could put in place the necessary approvals so as to not potentially run foul of this legislation. So in effect, what we were seeing was business grinding to a halt across the state.
How did it compare to the requirements under the original Act?
Well, the difference under the original Act was that a site was registered after the Aboriginal Cultural Materials Committee had examined the evidence, and then it was put on the register. And then there was processes where people, if there were instances of Aboriginal cultural heritage on their properties, there was quite clearly laid out in the register, and there were processes where they could go to that committee and work through to get an understanding as to how they could undertake their development in a way that was in accordance with the legislation. All of that's much more confused under the new Act, and there's far less rigour in determining whether or not there is any significance to a site. It just really needs to be reported by someone, and it goes up on the website. So consequently, you're seeing a plethora of sites being registered since this legislation came in.